They say when you find true love, you just know. That's how it was with Horace. We met in university. He was the quiet type, reserved but with a smile that disarmed even the coldest days. I was drawn to his kindness long before I understood the depth of his soul. We studied in the same department, crossed paths during late-night study sessions, and eventually, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee after class. That one cup turned into 1,000. By the time we turned 30, we were married. No grand proposals, no fireworks, just an unspoken promise that we would walk through life together. Horace wasn't flashy. He believed in small things: handwritten notes, morning tea on the balcony, and holding my hand when the world felt heavy. Life with him was quiet, gentle, and full of meaning. Horace's best friend, Fahad, was always nearby. They grew up together, practically brothers. Fahad was the outgoing one, always cracking jokes, bringing light into any room. While Horace balanced me emotionally, Fahad often made us laugh when things felt too serious. He became like family, someone we could count on, especially during hard times. Then came the illness. Horace started getting tired easily, brushing it off as stress. But weeks turned into months, and one day he collapsed at work. The diagnosis was cruel, an aggressive form of cancer. It moved faster than we could hope to fight. In just under a year, I went from planning weekend getaways with my husband to planning his funeral. The silence after his passing was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Our home became a mausoleum of memories. I couldn't bear to pack his clothes or touch the mug he always used. Every corner whispered his name. Fahad was the only one who kept showing up. He didn't offer empty condolences. He brought food when I forgot to eat. He fixed the leaky tap Horace never got around to. He stood at the grave longer than anyone else, his eyes red but dry. A week after the funeral, I opened the door to find him holding a bag of groceries. "You haven't eaten in 2 days," he said gently, stepping inside without waiting for a response. I didn't argue. I just watched him move around the kitchen like he belonged, like nothing had changed except everything had. At the time, I thought it was just friendship, a man keeping a promise to his best friend. And maybe it was. But sometimes, grief has a way of blurring boundaries we thought were cleared. And the weeks that followed, Fahad became a regular presence in my life. What began as occasional help turned into something more structured. He'd bring groceries every Friday, mow the lawn on Sundays, and sit with me in the evenings when the silence got too heavy. I told myself he was just being kind, honoring Horace's memory. But deep down, I knew there was something more to it than that. He never spoke about his own grief. Instead, he made space for mine. Sometimes he'd share memories of Horace that even I didn't know: childhood mischiefs, high school crushes, late-night road trips. I clung to those stories like lifelines, desperate to keep Horace alive through them. One evening, I fell asleep on the couch while we were watching an old movie. When I woke up, a blanket was draped over me and Fahad was sitting on the floor beside the coffee table, quietly reading. The sight was oddly intimate. Too intimate. That night, I lay in bed longer than usual, my thoughts tangled in guilt and questions I didn't dare voice. Was it wrong to feel safe with him? Was I betraying Horace by letting someone else care for me? Grief is strange. It doesn't move in a straight line. Some days I missed Horace, so fiercely it hurt to breathe. Other days, I found myself smiling at Fahad's jokes, momentarily forgetting the weight I carried. Then came the rain. It was one of those long, cold evenings when the world feels heavier than usual. The power went out, and I lit candles around the living room. Fahad showed up with a flashlight and hot food, insisting he stay until the lights returned. We sat across from each other, shadows flickering on the walls. The air was warm with silence. "I still talk to him sometimes," I said suddenly, eyes fixed on the candle flame. "So do I," he replied softly. Our eyes met. There was a long pause, the kind that feels like a question and an answer at the same time. He reached for my hand, gently, hesitantly. I didn't pull away. The warmth of his touch startled me. Not because it was new, but because it didn't feel wrong. Before either of us could speak, the lights came back on. We both blinked, almost embarrassed, retreating to our own sides of the room like two people caught in a moment that should never have happened. The next morning, I found myself standing in Horace's study, holding one of his old notebooks. Tucked between the pages was a letter addressed to me in his familiar handwriting. "If life moves on, don't fight it," it read. "Love again if you must. Just promise me you won't spend forever waiting." Reading Horace's letter should have brought clarity. Instead, it left me suspended between sorrow and permission. Love again if you must. But how could I love someone who stood in the shadow of the man I lost? Still, something shifted that day. I started seeing Fahad differently, not just as Horace's best friend, not just as a helper, but as a man standing quietly at the edge of my healing. I let myself laugh more. I let him stay longer. Then one evening, Fahad invited me to dinner. Not takeout, not groceries, a reservation at a quiet rooftop restaurant. I hesitated, unsure whether this crossed an invisible line. But I went. I told myself it was harmless. I wanted to thank him for being there. We sat under soft lights, the city glowing behind him. The food was delicious, but I barely touched it. There was something in his eyes, an intensity one hadn't noticed before. Halfway through the meal, he placed his hand over mine. "Amina, I've wanted to tell you this for a long time," he said, voice steady. "I love you." The words landed like thunder. I froze. "I think I always have," he continued. "Even before Horace got sick. I tried to ignore it, tried to stay away. But when he passed, I couldn't bear to see you alone." My mind spiraled. "Before Horace got sick? What are you saying?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "I'm saying I didn't just come back because of a promise," he said. "I came back because I saw a chance." A chance. Suddenly, the warmth I had felt turned cold. I realized I had welcomed someone into my life without questioning his motives. Had he been circling all along, waiting for Horace to be out of the picture? That night, I couldn't sleep. The comfort I once felt in his presence now felt like manipulation cloaked in kindness. The next morning, I heard him talking on the phone in the backyard. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the words cut through the silence. "She's opening up. I think she'll say yes soon. I just need a little more time." My stomach turned. When he came back inside, I was waiting. "Who are you talking to?" I asked quietly. He hesitated, then lied. "Just a work call." I didn't push further. Instead, I stepped aside and handed him his keys. "You should go," I said, my voice flat. "Whatever this was, it's over." He looked at me, stunned. "Amina, I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I interrupted. "That's the problem." He stood frozen for a moment, then turned and left without another word. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let the silence swallow me. The days that followed felt hollow, but not in the way grief had hollowed me before. This was a different kind of emptiness, one born from disappointment, from the weight of misplaced trust. I had been grieving Horace for over a year, but now I was grieving the illusion that Fahad had been the safe harbor I thought he was. I spent more time in silence. I went for long walks, cleaned out the garage, even donated Horace's clothes, a task I had avoided for so long. Not out of bitterness, but because something inside me had shifted. I no longer felt the need to hold on to everything. My healing didn't need to wear a scent or sleep beside his empty pillow. Then, one morning, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Fahad. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know the love I felt was real, even if I buried it in the wrong timing." I let my emotions cloud my judgment. "I stayed close, not just for you but for myself. I'm sorry. Truly. I hope you find peace, even if I'm not part of it." I read it twice, then tucked it into a drawer. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. Just clarity. Love doesn't always arrive wrapped in sincerity. Sometimes, it wears the mask of care, only to serve its own need. But that didn't mean I had to carry its weight. I started writing again, something I had stopped after Horace died. I wrote about grief, about unexpected betrayals, about what it meant to rediscover yourself when the people you leaned on couldn't carry you anymore. Eventually, I moved to a smaller apartment in a quieter part of town. It didn't carry the echoes of the past. I painted the walls myself, bought secondhand furniture, planted herbs by the window. There was something healing about building a space that was entirely mine. One evening, while sorting through a box of old photographs, I found one of Horace and me laughing on a picnic. I smiled, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. His love had shaped me, but it no longer confined me. I whispered to the photo, "I'll always love you, but now I also love myself." That night, I made tea, lit a candle, and watched the rain from my balcony, not waiting for anyone to arrive. For the first time in a long while, I felt whole. Not because someone stood beside me, but because I had learned to stand on my own.